Uh, Good evening, sir. Am I audible?
Good evening. I can hear you well. Can you hear me
Okay,
and
that's
see me properly?
yes, you're perfectly audible. Not an issue. So I think we should begin. We have quite a decent amount of followers at this point of time. So as we move on with the interview, I think more people will join us. So yes, we shall begin. So for the uninitiated, obviously after the 2022 Wala result, I don't think you need any introduction, but I'd like to give a brief introduction for our viewers. IIT degree, IIT Kharagpur, you went to IIT Kharagpur and you did your BTech in Electronics and Communications. And after that, you did your micro-specialization from Johns Hopkins.
Yes.
And you worked at Deloitte and McKinsey, which are like two amazing companies. And after that, you decided to switch to civil services. So this is like a really intriguing profile. So why did you make this choice?
Thank you for this very kind introduction, and good evening to everybody else who has joined. Uh, the decision to make a shift to civil services, it happened when I was working at Deloitte. And the decision, it was not in a very crystallized manner. It was just somewhere in the back of my mind that this is something I might attempt. And I wrote the 2018 attempt without any preparation, just with the purpose to write. So
Yeah,
that was I think the first step towards more crystallization of the journey that would last over 4 years. Probably it's still going on.
yeah,
The, the decision to actually write civil services, it came because I read a book by Mr. Shankar Menon, Choices. The book's name was Choices, and it spoke about the critical role that diplomats play in India's foreign policy making and running it. And that actually attracted me towards preparing for civil services.
yeah. So that choice must have been tough because you had a very lucrative career going on in the corporate world, and of course, like you were getting a good amount of salary and everything was set, right? Like you didn't need to, disturb the status quo. But it must have been a difficult decision. And did you, face any difficulties on the home front because of this?
A lot actually. And when you take that decision to it's more a kind of leap of faith. You don't know
Right.
how long it's exactly gonna last. If I would have known in 2018 that in 2023 I would still be reading newspaper daily, I might not have made that decision at that point of time. When you start with the mindset that it's probably going to be the first attempt itself, the very lucky one, or maybe a second attempt if it really comes to that. You don't really expect that it might last for 4 or maybe 6 attempts. So
Yeah.
that I think would answer the first part of question, that difficult choice. For the home front, it was really difficult because I and Prachi, we intended to get married, and at that time, leaving a job and to get into services, get into the preparation for services, uh, I left the job for a little while. That was really difficult because it had created problems for her. And, but it was really about the support that she gave to me. That I was really able to cope up with everything, all the different things that were going on at that point of time.
Not everybody is, lucky enough to get a very supportive partner like you did. So, credit goes to her for this because this process requires a lot of patience on your behalf as well as the people who are associated with you. So, full credit to her.
Completely.
Yeah. So, when you decided to start preparing for this exam, how did you like initially chalk out a plan, or what was your role strategy? Like, how did you plan to go on about it?
At the beginning, I started off at a very low base. I actually even didn't know what was the difference between president and prime minister and why we have two roles. And every time
Yeah.
that there's a meeting in between India and USA, why is the prime minister of India meeting the president as like the high summit, and not the president and president meet? So these were very,
Yeah.
so that would tell you that I had absolutely no grounding of it at all, and engineering had made me forget it all. There was no strategy when I began. Uh, in after 2018 attempt in June, when I thought that let's try to prepare it, I had actually no idea how to go about it. The only thing I had in my mind at that time was maybe it will last 2 years, maybe I'll get in my second attempt, but let's try to uh, arrange the facts and the things that I'm going to read in a way that even if I have to write till the sixth attempt, because everybody knew that people have like struggled for 7-8 years just to get into the service. So I
Yeah.
try to keep it long term. The notes that I'll make, I try to think that if something am I reading, is it too short term? Maybe it will end in a month, or maybe is it something that might last for a long time? That the long term thinking was the first thing that I had.
Right. Choosing an optional is also one of the biggest difficulties that any aspirant faces, including me as well, because it takes a lot of time and people from engineering background like us, we don't really have any idea about anything. And GS subjects are like friends to us. So
Absolutely.
it takes like around 6 to 7, for me at least, it took around 6 to 7 months to, even decide on an optional. So how did you make that choice? What was your initial prep for choosing that optional, and how did you go on about the optional subject?
Um, so I graduated from electronics and communication, which is not a subject among the optionals. Electric engineering is there, but it's very different from electronics that I have. So I had to anyway choose from the given list of optionals. My first thought was towards philosophy because I wanted to study philosophy. And but when I started reading it, when I went through the material, at the very first instant, it came across as too difficult. About that, like even humanities at that point of time. So I switched to more concrete subject, mathematics. This decision, it took me first 4 months to make. So in August 2018, I decided that I'll study mathematics and got into full mode preparation for it. For 1 year, I studied mathematics very diligently. But when I joined back, so between 2000, January 2019 to September 2019, I was studying at home. At that time, I
Okay.
was focusing on mathematics because mathematics was generally a good scoring optional up till that point. Somebody had even scored
Mhm.
380. Uh, so I went with that, but then in September I realized that, and I joined a job at Zivanta Analytics. It became very difficult for me to balance it. That at that time I had to make the switch again, so that wasted another 1 year. I switched to sociology because number one, I felt that knowing about Indian society would be really helpful if I were to get into civil services, service of the country. Number two, somebody had scored really good marks and got into top five rank with sociology. So I had that practical aspect in my mind. Third is I went
Right.
to the previous year question papers and I realized that the questions that have been asked on say caste and family, these are more common sensical, and I would be able to write answers on them even without knowing anything. This was a misconception that later got clarified, but that in the initial stage I made that choice. These three factors.
Right. Okay. That's nice. You also, secured a decent like 19th rank in your BPSC examination. Um, how did that go? Like, simultaneously preparing for state PCS and UPSC is a little bit dicey, and it can prove to be a wrong decision for a lot of people because straddling in two boards is very risky. So, how did you prepare for BPSC while preparing for UPSC and doing a job?
So, BPSC, I did not actually intend to join state services. Uh, when I failed my first two prelims, my father suggested that maybe I should get more practice and writing state services exam that might come in handy. That experience that I'll gain, it might be useful even when I'm writing UPSC. That was the whole reason I wrote it. Because my
Right.
preferred service was foreign service, and that is not covered in state service. That is only a central service. Now, the preparation I did not prepared for it BPSC separately at all. The 65 BPSC which I cleared, uh, that it the way it only differed. The dates were around 1 month before and after, so I was already in the peak of my preparation mode, and I did not
Right.
prepare for state separately. I was hoping that everything that I've studied for overall India, I'll be able to only attempt those questions, and I'll completely skip the state questions. And that was my actually my strategy. It's a very foolish strategy unless you have, if you have state services in your mind. But that worked. And in fact, rank 19 is actually because I did not write any question that in the options, in all the question papers, you get 8 questions and you have to attempt 5. I tried to pick only those 5 that which I would be able to answer on an all India basis and not would not involve any questions on the state.
Okay. Um, so, in 2020, you secured All India rank 233 and then you joined IRS. And then you improved tremendously in this attempt and you secured an All India rank of 143. Uh, what were the mistakes that you think you made in your previous attempt? And what did you correct? Like, what was the right thing that you did this time that you improved your rank so much?
Yes. Uh, this question had been in the back of my mind for a real long time. I actually,
Yeah.
right after my result, the first thing I Googled was how to improve your UPSC rank. Uh, I did not get any significant answers, so uh, I would like to briefly discuss about this. First thing is, there is no way to improve UPSC rank. When every time when you're writing, it's from scratch. So instead of Googling how to improve UPSC rank, it would be the same as Googling how to secure a good rank in essentially the same. That being said, maybe the previous mark sheet it gives you an idea on which areas one can improve upon. For me, the biggest losing part in my 2020 attempt was sociology, in which I had scored only 236, and I had to really work
Yeah.
hard upon that. So I, for next, even when I was at the foundation course at Labasna, I was studying mostly sociology, and I devoted a disproportionate amount of time towards sociology. I was able to improve upon it, but then what happened was those areas in which I had performed well in 2020 attempt, there on those areas I got lesser marks this time. So in 2020 I got 134 in essay. This time I've got only 93. So it's a loss of like 40 marks. So what I gained at one place, I lost at another. Uh, then in GS, I try to improve upon introduction and conclusions. I felt that in the body I was doing a fair justice to the question, but in the introduction I wanted to make it more broad, and conclusion I wanted to make it more relatable to the past and future. So if there would be a question on, say, uh, performance of moderates. So I would also talk about in the introduction, I would try to link it backwards. That moderates was a reaction of the failure of 1857 revolt. And in the conclusion, I would try to link it uh, forward. That the failure of moderates then gave rise to the extremists and then to the Gandhian failure struggle. So these are some things that I tried to adjust in specific papers. In GS4, I try to include as many quotes as possible. So even when the question is not about description of a quote, in the conclusion I would put a quote, or I would start with a quote in the beginning. Uh, in sociology, what I focused was rather than focusing on writing the names of various thinkers, I would try to write about the the sociological perspective that they represented. So instead of writing about Durkheim, I would say functionalists would say this. Instead of say writing about Lester Milbrath, I would say Marxist would say this. And then even within that, I would try to make distinctions. Say liberal feminists would say this, radical feminists would say this, Marxian feminists would say this. So I try to give as many perspectives as I could. Instead of quoting these, the perspectives came in handy.
So from whatever you said, I've gathered that you basically had a holistic approach towards the subject. You were not specific about it. Like you were not targeting specific groups. You were just targeting the society in general,
Yes.
which really helped and made the difference.
Yes.
That's right. Um, this is sort of a personal question, but this is a tiring process, right? It
Right.
requires immense amount of patience.
Very much.
Um, So at any point, like, did you, because when things are not happening and we have to study so much and we have to be inside the room and get practically cut off from the society and everything that is associated with fun and merriment. So did you at any point think that galti ho gayi yaar?
Uh, Even after getting in the services, this thought is not going to go away. Maybe you'll still think my salary has been cut into 1/3. The work culture is very different. Why exactly did I land up here? And I think maybe this is true for all areas of life. I want to talk about a friend of mine. I did my college well. At that point, I had no intention of getting into civil services, so I enjoyed it. Then I got into a job. I earned. I did all. I lived my life properly. I did not try to sacrifice too much. But there is a friend who was also from IT Kharagpur. He did not set into placements. He was in a relationship that he also broke because he wanted to focus entirely on studies. And now in
Right.
his fifth attempt, he has still not been able to clear the exam, and he's into complete depression. So this is very UPSC takes that toll upon you, especially if you not make too many sacrifices for it. And this is what I want to suggest to people, that do not sacrifice your life entirely for it. This is an exam. I know it sounds very hollow because I have sacrificed my previous job, some things I have, going to weddings. So you have to, strike a balance there. Do not give up on the core, on the very essential things of your life. If you like somebody, if you're, very passionate about traveling or reading, do not give up entirely, because that takes away your soul from you. After 5 years, what good it would be if you're depressed completely. Also, you know, uh, many times there will be the thought that I want to get out of this exam, especially if you fail the exam. But there is also this revengeful preparation. This comes in, say, after you have failed. 1 month you are in under depression that I failed it again. But then 1 month later you think that how can I fail? I don't want, that seeking of validation that comes into picture, and you want to prepare solely because the service goes out of the picture, everything else goes out of the picture. You are preparing only to prove to yourself that you are prepared. Don't get into that mindset. Although I won't say that I have been able to get out of that mindset myself. So maybe I'm not the right person to advise this, but I really feel that do not prepare only for the vengeance of clarity.
Yeah, that's true. That vengeance should be left at home while preparing. Passion should take over, I guess.
Yes, there is a very thin line between passion and vengeance. The
Yes.
Moby Dick story, but somewhere, think about butterflies and forests still.
That's a beautiful way to say, whatever you said. Uh, you know, there are there is a lot of like confusion in students and aspirants about many things like answer writing, ethics, paper four, essay. So I'd like you to address a little bit on the issue of answer writing. Like it's a very big deal among students. Like, so how do you plan on answering questions properly? Because writing is a very essential part of this examination. How much time do you when should one start writing answers firstly, and how much time should one dedicate to writing answers? I'd like to know about that.
Uh, Before I answer this question, I would like to talk about what, in my perspective, is the right process flow for clearing UPSC. And since the subject of this is to prepare for from scratch for 2024, I would say in the very first stage, try to take a look at the syllabus. This is what I did in the beginning. Second is try to get hold of the books The standard set of books is as good as, you can find that list anywhere. Go through that set of books once and devote maybe 2 months to it. I have
Right.
a website called ParasharIRS.in where I've actually made this into a diagram and I've put it there. If people want to take a look, that might be handy, but I'll briefly describe it. So first week, focus on syllabus. Try to read newspaper. Next 2 months, try to study the basic books. This would include NCRT polity, NCRT history, geography. Say if you have access to ShankarIRS, maybe the book on one basic book on ethics, say lexicon. Uh, this would be to not to improve your answer writing, but only to create in your idea a set of uh, check boxes that you have done. So every time that somewhere you read Constitution, it strikes in your mind that okay, what is Constitution? You at least know what is Constitution. So this is not for answer writing. The next 3 or 4 months, uh, get into a higher set of books. So move from NCRT to Lakshmikant, from say basic books on economics to maybe if you want to read Ramesh Singh, even though I did not, then read Shankar IS, Spectrum. So these I would call the higher set of books. Books which you actually pick up facts and you can use in the examination hall. Also, second ARC report, which I felt was very good. Then you get into answer writing mode, and at this point, you should have basic idea. Every time there is a question on Constitution, you know what Constitution, but you also this time know that there is a right to equality, and that there was a case, say, which was about say right to life, and there was Maneka Gandhi case and how that modified. At this stage, you start answer writing once you have gone through the basic books as well as the higher level books. After this, it becomes a cyclical process. Now, again, you would try to add value to your answer. So now, if you don't want to go back to the book, that's fine. Say you come across quality notes from Vision IS, the monthly compilation. Then you add something to your notes. Then you again go back to answer writing. Then you check the answer scripts, the model answer scripts that are given, some good material. You find that you again integrate that into your answer, and this is a loop that goes on. So as many number of times you're able to finish this loop, it will reflect in your marks and the way that you write answer.
Right. Okay. That actually answered a lot of our questions. So I think this was a very, very informative session, and a lot of our doubts got cleared because as soon as the result comes in, panic starts hitting everyone. Like even the people who did not get selected, and even the people who have just started preparing, like some sort of panic starts hitting. Even like people like me who did not attempt the exam this year, and the result comes, and you're like, oh my god, what did just happen? So a lot of those insecurities and doubts were cleared by you. So thank you very much. But before concluding this session, I'd like you to, give some message or some sort of advice that you think is mandatory for our aspirants. Anything that you would want to tell us.
Um, I think one thing is that you should know when to stop. Uh, I personally feel, and I'm sure many people also feel from what I've gathered in social media, that people devote 1/10 of, say, if you are going to live 6 years and you devote 6 years, or for people from category 10 years for preparation, you're losing a major chunk of your life where you are, not gaining any experience except repeating the same things that you have read over and over again. And if you feel that you have gone into a mindset where you're only preparing for vengeance or preparing to prove it to वो ठुकरा के मेरा प्यार मेरा इंतकाम देखेगी, if you have gone into that mindset, it's better to get out of that cycle. People have done extremely well outside. I know this sounds kind of difficult to judge when you have gone into that mindset, to know it personally. But people around you, if you're surrounded by a network of good people, they'll tell you that you need to stop. But try to assess whether you need to stop right now. because at any point of time, if you have studied well, if you have done something, you might be able to get a different job. UPSC is not just one job. There are many jobs. The only thing is UPSC is not just a job. It's also a way of life. When you become an officer, that sets you apart from when you're working in corporate. But know when to stop. One more thing I would like to add is, do not, when we are preparing, we feel like, if we stop breathing for 5 minutes, what if that's the only thing that's stopping us from getting selected? Do not try to, cut off the very essential things that are driving you. And the third is that, I said this before as well, have that long-term perspective in your mind. Uh, the most hitting the rock bottom comes when you had expected that this time is gonna be your time. The second attempt is the time when I'm going to finish everything, and I'm going to be the winner of the world. So have that perspective that it might end up at the sixth attempt, and if you have time to prepare, go for the sixth attempt, but just with the butterfly.
What a beautiful way to end this session. I hope you also had like fun while interacting with us.
Absolutely, it was a pleasure talking.
Same here, sir. Thank you so much for joining us and looking forward to see you again.
Same here. Good night. Take
All the
care.
best. All the very best.
Best wishes to everybody who has joined. I hope you do well and you're able to assess your situation well, that you do good.
Thank you so much, sir. Have a very good night and a very good life. Thank you so much for everything.